Well, let's cross over. Well, the Pentagon's controversial program to train and equip militants opposed to the Syrian government is failing due to the lack of volunteers. Now, the U.S. initially planned to train 5,400 militants per year, but so far fewer than 100 volunteers have turned up. Last week, military officials said that they still hope to attract 3,000 militants by the end of the year. In 2014, the White House asked Congress for $500 million to fund the program. However, the training is moving so slowly that critics are questioning whether it can produce capable militants quickly enough to make a difference. And now we'll cross over to San Francisco, joined by Mr. Scott Bennett, former U.S. Army psychological warfare officer and counterterrorism analyst. Thank you so much for being with us. Well, what do you make of this situation that actually the program was offered, but no volunteers showed up? Why do you think that's the case?
Well, I worked in psychological operations. I worked at the highest levels of the military and State Department and the Bush administration, and I was part of the key teams that developed the messaging and the strategic communications. And that has been the failure of the United States, is to not understand the culture, the language, the history, the religion, the tribalism, all of those variables that inhabit the Middle Eastern equation of identity. And it's astounding to me. It's shameful and absolutely crazy that the United States is continuing this policy of trying to find, basically in the middle of the desert, oasis of democracies that think like little U.S. automatons and have the same values and beliefs and things that have been grown in the United States from its 1776 Germanic, Celtic, English culture. They don't have that in the Middle East, and yet we continue to fail to adapt our communications properly.
Let me just jump in here, Mr. Bennett, what you just said, talking about that, looking for that oasis of perhaps democracy. Is it that the United States is looking for that, or is it with what they're doing, they're actually preventing those perhaps who are seeking more egalitarian situations on the ground, actually preventing that from taking place?
Well, let's always judge people by their actions and not by their words and what they say. And the actions of the United States really has been bloodshed and destruction and damage over the past 10, 15 years in the Middle East. And you can't say seriously that you are looking to cultivate democracy by destroying people and causing bloodshed. Democracy and representation has to be a voluntary thing. Otherwise, it's tyranny. It's either tyranny by the existing ruler or it's tyranny by the United States. And the tyranny of the United States is even worse because the U.S. goes in, sets up a tyranny, and then pulls out and causes chaos and mayhem to unfold. This whole psyop of recruiting people to fight ISIS is complete nonsense because no one is going to fight for the United States. No one in that area is going to fight for the American values of democracy or anything that it believes. They're going to fight only for their tribe, what they believe in, their values, and that is something we fail to understand and incorporate. If the United States was serious about fighting ISIS, and I don't think they are, I think they're using them as a mercenary force to destabilize Syria and Assad and ultimately destabilize Iran. And I think that's very dangerous. But if they were serious, they would create a special confederacy, if you will, using Russia, China, and Iran to unify with the United States and focus specifically on ISIS, on the Islamic State. They wouldn't worry about Assad. They wouldn't worry about all of the other peculiar differences in opinion or attitude or political governance. They would simply focus on destroying the destructive bloodshed that's putting women into sex slavery and killing and maiming and destroying the historical sites of humanity. If the United States was serious, it would create a coalition instead of demanding that the world follow its lead. And I don't know when the United States was voted as the world's leader. I think that's been the most destructive thing our country has ever allowed to happen. Americans are very simple. Americans believe They've been fighting in that area of the world for thousands of years. It's none of the American people's business or interests, and let them alone and let the world take its own course. This interventionism has caused us nothing but trillions of dollars, bloodshed in thousands of men and women killed and maimed and traumatized, and it's destroyed the American reputation. No country in the Islamic world respects or likes the United States anymore. So obviously, any fight that it gets into, every Islamic personality is going to, yes, I'll take your money, I'll take your training, I'll pretend I'm going to fight for you, and then I'm going to take the weapons and fight against you. It's the Salah ad-Din methodology and strategy. And it's sad that the United States military and Congress don't learn from that. And I can't chalk it up to ignorance. I have to chalk it up to they are intentionally using this ISIS as an opportunity to create more instability in the Middle East. And I hope it's reversed, but I think this latest plan is complete ignorance, and I think it's going to fall apart. I hope the rest of the world can help educate the United States politicians very quickly so that we gain a more egalitarian, pragmatic view of politics and seek out friendship with Iran, seek out friendship with Russia, seek out closer ties with China to focus on that problem and stop going the Salafist, Wahhabist alliance with Saudi Arabia and Qatar and Oman and Kuwait that have been funding these people. They've been funding these organizations. And I saw that firsthand in the Swiss bank reports that I was filing up the chain of command into the American politician since 2012. And that's a whole other story, but they have covered up that, and they've refused to cut off the funding.
Thank you so much. Hopefully we'll be able to talk to you more about that subject you just brought up. Out of San Francisco, Mr. Scott Bennett, former U.S. Army psychological warfare officer and counterterrorism analyst.